I'm Mia Alvarez. I graduated top of my class in computer science, but no one in my family was there. You know why? Because they spent 4 years and all their savings putting my cousin through college while telling me I wasn't college material. But today I made sure the whole family saw just how wrong they were. Growing up, it was just me and my mom Sylvia. She worked double shifts at the diner just to keep our tiny apartment, but we had something most families don't. We had each other. And we had extended family who actually seemed to care. My mom's brother Carlos and his wife Rosa lived in this beautiful 2-story house across town. Their son Diego was my age, my cousin practically my brother. Every Sunday dinner, every holiday, every birthday, we were there. I thought we were one big happy family. Then, when I was 14, everything changed. Mom collapsed at work. Heart attack. She was gone before the ambulance even arrived. I remember standing in that hospital hallway completely lost when Uncle Carlos put his hand on my shoulder. "Mija, you're not alone. You're coming home with us." Rosa nodded, but something in her eyes was different. "Of course you can stay with us. We'll take care of you." But here's what I learned real quick. There's a difference between taking someone in and making them family. Diego got the bigger bedroom upstairs. I got the converted basement. Diego got a brand new MacBook for his 16th birthday. I got a used calculator from Walmart. When it came time for SAT prep, Diego got private tutoring sessions that cost $300 a week. I got library books and whatever free practice tests I could find online. And Rosa. She had this way of making it sound like charity. "Diego is going places, mija. He's got that spark, college material. You're more of a helper type. Practical, reliable. Not everyone needs to be a scholar." Every time she said it, a little piece of me died. But I believed her. I actually believed that maybe I wasn't smart enough, wasn't special enough, wasn't worth investing in. The worst part, Diego never once questioned why he got everything while I got nothing. He just accepted it as normal. Like I was supposed to be grateful for the scraps. For 4 years, I lived in that house feeling like a guest who'd overstayed her welcome. But I had nowhere else to go. So I smiled, said thank you, and tried to convince myself that this was what family looked like. I had no idea they were about to make it so much worse. Senior year hit like a freight train. College applications, SATs, the whole circus. And for the first time in years, I actually felt hopeful. Maybe this was my chance to prove I wasn't just the helper type. I spent every free moment on those applications. While Diego was out partying, I was writing essays at 2 a.m., researching scholarships, calling admissions offices. I applied to 12 schools, including CalTech, my dream school for computer science. Diego, he applied to maybe 5 schools, all because Rosa made him. State schools mostly, nothing too challenging. Then, the letters started coming. I'll never forget that day in March. I was coming home from my shift at the grocery store when I saw Diego sitting on the front porch holding a thin envelope. His face said everything. "Rejected from UCLA," he mumbled, "and USC, and Berkeley." My heart sank for him. Despite everything, he was still my cousin. "I'm sorry, Diego. But hey, you still have backups, right?" That's when Rosa came outside with a thick envelope in her hands. My name was on it. "This came for you today," she said, but her voice was flat, almost disappointed. I tore it open right there on the porch. CalTech, acceptance letter, partial scholarship covering 60% of tuition. I couldn't breathe. I actually got in. Me. The girl who wasn't college material. "That's great, mija," Rosa said, but she was already walking back inside. 3 days later, Diego got accepted to San Diego State. No scholarship, no aid, just acceptance. And that night, everything fell apart. "We need to talk," Carlos said at dinner. Rosa was avoiding eye contact, which should have been my first clue. "Diego's college is going to cost us about $25,000 a year," Carlos continued. "And with your CalTech situation, even with the partial scholarship, you're looking at $30,000 annually." I nodded, waiting for them to tell me how we'd figure it out together. Instead, Rosa cleared her throat. We've made a decision. We're going to use your mother's college fund for Diego. The fork slipped from my hand and clattered onto the plate. What? Diego needs this more than you, Rosa said like she was explaining why the sky is blue. He's always struggled academically. This is his one shot. You're smart, Mia. You're practical. You'll figure something out. I stared at them, waiting for the punchline, waiting for someone to say they were joking. That money was my mom's. She saved every penny for my education. And now it's going to good use, Rosa snapped. Diego is our son, our responsibility. You should be grateful we even took you in. There it was. 4 years of pretending to be family, and it all came down to that one sentence. They stole my future with my mother's money, the woman who worked herself to death saving for my college dreams, and they handed it to their golden boy who barely graduated high school. That night I called CalTech and deferred my admission for a year. I told them I needed time to secure funding. What I didn't tell them was that I was about to become the most motivated person they'd ever seen. That night changed everything. I lay in that basement bedroom staring at the ceiling, and I made myself a promise. I was going to CalTech, with or without their help, with or without their money, with or without their blessing, but first I had to get out of that house. The next morning I called my friend Jessica. Her family had always liked me, and when I explained the situation, her mom didn't hesitate. Pack your things. You're staying here as long as you need. Within a week, I'd moved out. Rosa acted like I was being dramatic. You're making a mistake, Mija. You'll be back. I never went back. Living at Jessica's meant I could finally focus on what mattered. I picked up extra shifts at the grocery store, but it wasn't enough. College was expensive, even with scholarships. That's when I remembered something Mr. Thompson, my high school computer science teacher, had said. He'd always believed in me when no one else did. So I went to see him. Mia, his face lit up when I walked into his classroom after school. I heard about CalTech. That's incredible. When I explained my situation, his expression darkened. They did what with your mother's college fund? It doesn't matter now, I said. I need to figure this out on my own. Mr. Thompson leaned back in his chair thinking. You know what, Mia? Maybe this is exactly what you needed. I stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Hear me out, he continued. They may have cut you off, but they can't stop you from building your own ladder. He pulled out a piece of paper and started writing. There's a local tech company called Data Flow Solutions. They're looking for a part-time junior developer. The pay is decent and they're flexible with student schedules. My heart started racing, but I don't have enough experience for a real tech job. You built that inventory system for the school library in 2 days. You created that grade tracking app that half the teachers are using. Mia, you have more practical experience than most college graduates. 3 days later, I was sitting in Dataflow's office, nervous as hell, showing them my portfolio on an old laptop, held together with duct tape. The interview went better than I'd dreamed. They offered me $22 an hour, 15 hours a week. It was more money than I'd ever seen. But here's where things got interesting. After a month at Dataflow, I started noticing problems. Their freelance contractors were constantly struggling with project management, time tracking, invoicing, basic stuff that was eating up hours of their productive time. I mentioned it to my supervisor, Marcus. Yeah, it's been an issue for years. We've tried different tools, but nothing really fits what these small freelancers need. That night, I couldn't sleep. My brain was spinning with ideas. What if I built something specifically for solo freelancers and small teams? Something simple, affordable, designed by someone who actually understood the struggle I spent the next 3 months working on it. Every free moment, every weekend, every late night after homework. I called it TrackFlow. The first version was basic, time tracking, simple invoicing project organization. Nothing fancy, but it worked. I reached out to 5 freelancers I'd met through Dataflow. Hey, would you mind testing this tool I built? It's free for now. Within 2 weeks, they were all using it daily, and they were telling their friends. By month 6, I had 30 users. By month 8, I had over 200. Marcus pulled me aside at work one day. Mia, I don't know what you're doing in your spare time, but 3 of our contractors have been raving about some app called TrackFlow. They say it's revolutionized their workflow. I tried to play it cool. Oh, that's actually something I built. His jaw dropped. You built TrackFlow seriously? Word spread fast at Dataflow. Soon their CEO wanted to meet with me. We've been looking for a solution like this for our own contractor network, she said. What would it take to get a corporate license? That's when I realized I wasn't just building a hobby project anymore. I was building a business. I spent my 18th birthday setting up an LLC and opening a business bank account. While Diego was probably still sleeping off some party, I was becoming an entrepreneur. The best part, every late-night coding session, every rejected feature request I had to prioritize, every small victory when a user sent a thank you email, it all felt like proof that Rosa had been wrong about me. I wasn't just the helper type. I was the person who saw problems and built solutions. I was the person who turned rejection into rocket fuel. And I was just getting started. By the time I was ready to start at CalTech, TrackFlow had over 500 users and was generating enough revenue to cover my remaining tuition costs. But here's what I didn't know yet. The family that had written me off, they had no idea what I'd accomplished. They still thought I was that broken 18-year-old girl who'd slunk away in defeat. They were about to find out how wrong they were. But first, I was about to discover just how much worse their betrayal really was. It was my junior year at CalTech. I was thriving. TrackFlow now had over 2,000 users, I was pulling straight A's, and I'd just landed a summer internship at Google. Life was finally making sense. That's when I ran into Maria Gonzalez at a coffee shop near campus. Maria had been Diego's girlfriend senior year of high school. I hadn't seen her since graduation. Mia, oh my God, how are you? She hugged me like we were old friends. I heard you got into CalTech. That's amazing. Thanks. How's everything with you? Are you still with Diego? Her face immediately changed. Diego. We broke up like 2 years ago, right after he... She stopped mid-sentence, looking uncomfortable. Right after he... What? Maria glanced around nervously. You don't know, do you? A cold feeling started creeping up my spine. Know what? Mia Diego dropped out of San Diego State halfway through sophomore year. That was 2 years ago. The coffee cup slipped from my hands and shattered on the floor. That's impossible. My aunt and uncle are still paying his tuition. They talk about his classes all the time. Maria's eyes went wide. Mia, no. He moved back home. He's been living in their basement, telling everyone he's taking a gap year to find himself. My legs felt weak. I sank into the nearest chair. What has he been doing for 2 years? Traveling, mostly. He went to Europe last summer for 3 months, bought this expensive camera equipment, said he was going to be a travel photographer. Then he went to Colorado for ski season. I think he's planning some trip to Southeast Asia next. Each word hit me like a physical blow. He's been funding all this, how? I assumed his parents were supporting him. He always had money for trips, gear, whatever he wanted. My mother's money. My college fund. The money she saved working double shifts and skipping meals. He'd been using it to party his way across continents, while I worked myself to exhaustion just to stay in school. But it got worse. The crazy part, Maria continued, is that his parents have been covering for him this whole time. At family gatherings, they talk about his classes. His professors even made up stories about his grades. Everyone thinks he's still in college. I felt like I was going to be sick. They've been lying to everyone for 2 years straight. I only know the truth because Diego got drunk one night and told me everything. He said his mom made him promise never to tell anyone he dropped out because it would embarrass the family. I sat there in stunned silence, trying to process what I'd just learned. Not only had they stolen my future to fund Diego's education, but there was no education. They'd stolen my mother's life savings to fund his extended vacation while lying to everyone about it. And they'd been doing it for 2 years while I scraped together every penny, worked every spare hour, and built a business from nothing just to afford the education they'd denied me. The worst part, they were still telling people at family gatherings that Diego was doing great in school, while never mentioning that I'd gotten into CalTech, that I was succeeding, that I'd proven them completely wrong about me. I wasn't just the girl they'd underestimated. I was the girl whose money they'd stolen to fund their son's lies. That night, I called Mr. Thompson. I needed to talk to someone who would understand just how twisted this was. "They've been lying for 2 years, he said, his voice filled with disgust. "Mia, this isn't just financial betrayal anymore. This is systematic deception." "I don't know what to do with this information." "Nothing. For now," he said firmly. "You focus on finishing strong at CalTech. But someday, when the time is right, the truth has a way of coming out." He was right. But I had no idea that day would come sooner than I thought, and it would be more public than I'd ever imagined. He was right. But I had no idea that day would come sooner than I thought, and it would be more public than I'd ever imagined. Senior year at CalTech arrived like a whirlwind. TrackFlow had grown beyond anything I'd dreamed. We now had over 8,000 users across 15 countries, and I'd hired 2 part-time developers to help manage the workload. But the real game changer came in February. I was sitting in advanced algorithms when my phone buzzed with an email that made my heart stop. The subject line read, "Congratulations, CalTech Student Accelerator Program Acceptance." I'd applied on a whim 3 months earlier. The CalTech Student Accelerator was legendary. They only accepted 12 companies per year, and the alumni list read like a who's who of Silicon Valley success stories. TrackFlow was in. The program came with mentorship from industry veterans, a $50,000 seed investment, and connections to venture capital firms that most entrepreneurs spent years trying to reach. Within weeks, everything accelerated. TechCrunch wrote a feature about our cohort. The Los Angeles Business Journal wanted to interview me about being the youngest founder in the program's history. Then came the call that changed everything. "Mia, this is Dean Richardson from the Computer Science Department. Do you have a moment?" My stomach dropped. Calls from the dean were never good news. "I'm calling with some exceptional news. The faculty has voted to select you as this year's commencement speaker." I nearly dropped the phone. "Commencement speaker, are you sure?" "Very sure. Your academic achievements combined with your entrepreneurial success embody everything we hope our students will accomplish. The ceremony is May 15th. Are you interested?" Interested? I was terrified and thrilled and overwhelmed all at once. Yes, absolutely. I'd be honored. Wonderful. There's one more thing. The faculty also voted to award you the Dean's Medal for Outstanding Achievement. You'll be graduating summa cum laude as our valedictorian. Valedictorian? Me? The girl who wasn't college material. That night I called Mr. Thompson to share the news. "Mia, this is incredible. Your mother would be so proud." "I keep thinking about that," I said. "She never got to see any of this. But she made it possible. Her sacrifice, her belief in education, it's all paying forward through you." A week later, the Los Angeles Business Journal published their feature. The headline read, "From foster teen to tech founder, CalTech student builds $1 million startup." The article went deeper than I expected. They'd done their research, talking to professors, mentors, even some of my TrackFlow users. It painted a picture of resilience and determination that I barely recognized as my own story. But here's where I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to invite my family to graduation. All of them. Uncle Carlos, Aunt Rosa Diego, the cousins, everyone. I sat at my laptop for hours crafting the perfect email. I didn't mention the valedictorian honor. I didn't mention the commencement speech. I didn't mention TrackFlow's success or the Business Journal article. I simply wrote, "I'm graduating from CalTech on May 15th. I'd love for you to be there. It would mean a lot to have family in the audience." Rosa's response came 2 days later. "Of course, mija. We're so proud of you for finishing college. We'll be there." The condescending tone was unmistakable. Finishing college. Like I'd barely scraped by instead of graduating at the top of my class. But that was perfect. Let them come expecting to see the same struggling girl they'd written off 4 years ago. I had a feeling they were in for quite a surprise. Diego never responded to the invitation, but through family group texts I learned he'd be there too. Apparently Rosa had convinced everyone it would be a nice family outing. 3 weeks before graduation, I found out something that made the whole situation even more poetic. The Los Angeles Business Journal article had been picked up by several other publications. CalTech's communications department was using my story in their marketing materials. The local news station wanted to do a segment about student entrepreneurs. I was becoming the poster child for everything Uncle Carlos and Aunt Rosa said I'd never be, and they had no idea. On graduation morning, as I stood in my cap and gown, preparing to address 3,000 people about overcoming adversity and building your own opportunities, I thought about that 14-year-old girl crying in a hospital hallway. She had no idea how strong she really was. But everyone was about to find out. Graduation day arrived with perfect California sunshine. I stood backstage in the campus auditorium watching 3,000 people file into their seats. Families with cameras, proud parents adjusting their ties, graduates buzzing with nervous energy. And somewhere in that crowd sat Uncle Carlos, Aunt Rosa, and Diego. I spotted them during the processional. Section C, about halfway back. Rosa was overdressed in a bright pink dress, Carlos looked uncomfortable in a suit that was too tight, and Diego was slumped in his chair scrolling through his phone. They had no idea they were about to witness the biggest moment of my life. Dean Richardson introduced me with a bio that made my chest swell with pride. Our commencement speaker graduated summa cum laude with a perfect 4.0 GPA while building a technology company that now serves over 10,000 users worldwide. I watched Rosa's face change as the dean continued. Her smile faltered. She leaned over to whisper something to Carlos, who was staring at the stage with his mouth slightly open. I walked to the podium and looked out at that sea of faces. For a moment, I felt like that scared 14-year-old girl again, but then I remembered everything I'd overcome to get here. 4 years ago, I began. Someone told me I wasn't college material, that I was more of a helper type, that some people are meant to be invested in, and others are meant to figure it out on their own. My voice carried across the auditorium, steady and clear. They were right about one thing. Some of us do have to figure it out on our own. But what they didn't understand is that when you're forced to build your own ladder, you learn how strong you really are. I could see Rosa shifting uncomfortably in her seat. Today, I want to talk to anyone who's ever been told they're not enough, who's ever had doors closed in their face, who's ever had to choose between giving up and fighting harder. The truth is, some of us weren't invested in, but that taught us the most valuable lesson of all, how to invest in ourselves. We learned that belief doesn't have to come from others. Opportunity doesn't have to be handed to us. Success doesn't require anyone's permission. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. To the graduates sitting here today who built their own path, you know who you are. You worked nights and weekends. You applied for every scholarship. You turned rejection into motivation. You proved that resilience isn't just about surviving hard times. It's about transforming them into rocket fuel. I paused, looking directly at my family. Your worth was never determined by who believed in you. It was determined by who you became when you believed in yourself. The applause was thunderous, but I wasn't done yet. As I returned to my seat, Dean Richardson took the podium for the special recognition portion of the ceremony. Before we confer degrees, I'd like to highlight some exceptional achievements from this year's graduating class. He went through several students, each accomplishment met with enthusiastic applause. But I want to spend a moment on our commencement speaker, Mia Alvarez, whose story embodies the very spirit of what makes CalTech special. My heart started racing. Ms. Alvarez didn't just excel academically. While maintaining a perfect GPA, she built TrackFlow, a software company that has just secured pre-seed funding of $250,000 from Sequoia Capital. Gasps rippled through the audience. I could see Rosa grab Carlos's arm. Her company has been featured in TechCrunch, the Los Angeles Business Journal, and will be profiled next month in Forbes' 30 Under 30 list. The applause was getting louder, but Dean Richardson raised his hand. But perhaps most remarkably, she achieved all of this despite being denied access to the very funds intended for her education. Funds that had been saved by her late mother specifically for Mia's college dreams, but were diverted by her guardians to support another family member's pursuits. The auditorium went completely silent. Ms. Alvarez worked multiple jobs, secured scholarships, and built a successful business rather than let that betrayal define her future. She exemplifies what it means to transform adversity into achievement. I could hear the murmurs starting, 3,000 people processing what they'd just heard. In recognition of her extraordinary perseverance and success, CalTech is proud to award Mia Alvarez the Dean's Medal for Outstanding Achievement. The standing ovation was deafening, but all I could focus on was Section C. Rosa's face had gone completely white. Carlos was staring at his hands. Diego had finally looked up from his phone and was gaping at the stage like he'd seen a ghost. They were watching their biggest mistake get the highest honor CalTech could give. As I walked across the stage to receive my medal, I caught Rosa's eye for just a moment. The woman who'd told me I wasn't college material was watching me be celebrated as the most accomplished graduate in my class. The woman who'd said Diego was going places was sitting next to the son who'd dropped out 2 years ago while spending my mother's money on vacation trips. The woman who'd called me a helper type was watching me get recognized for building a business that would soon be worth millions. I didn't smile at her. I didn't nod. I just held her gaze for one long moment before turning back to accept my medal. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's just success. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's just success. After the ceremony, I was surrounded by congratulations. Professors, classmates, industry mentors from the accelerator program. Everyone wanted to shake hands, take photos, talk about what came next for track flow. But through it all, I could see my family hovering at the edge of the crowd waiting. Mr. Thompson found me first. Mia, that speech was incredible, and that recognition from the dean, your mother would have been so proud. She would have loved seeing this, I said, accepting his hug. Thank you for believing in me when no one else did. I always knew you had it in you. The question was whether you'd believe it too. That's when I heard Rosa's voice behind me. Mija. I turned around. Rosa was standing there with Carlos, both of them looking shell-shocked. Diego was nowhere in sight. We had no idea, Rosa began, her voice shaky. About your business, about the recognition. We're so proud of you. The word proud coming from her mouth felt like a slap. Proud, I repeated, keeping my voice level. We only did what we thought was best at the time, she continued, trying to regain some composure. Diego was struggling, and you were always so independent, so capable. We thought you'd be fine. You thought I'd fail anyway, I said quietly. That's why you gave up on me before I had a chance. Carlos stepped forward. Mia, that's not fair. We took you in when you had nowhere to go. You took me in and reminded me every day that I wasn't really family. You used my mother's money to fund Diego's lie while I worked 3 jobs just to survive. We didn't know he would drop out, Rosa said defensively. But you knew he was struggling. You knew I was the better student. You knew that money was meant for me, and you chose him anyway because blood mattered more than fairness. The silence stretched between us. Around us, the celebration continued, but we were in our own little bubble of long overdue truth. We want to help now, Carlos said finally. We want to make this right. Maybe we could invest in your company or help you expand. I almost laughed. Help me now, after I've already succeeded, after I've already proven you wrong about everything. Mija, we're still family. No, I said, and the word came out stronger than I expected. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't lie for years to cover up their mistakes. Family doesn't abandon someone and then show up when it's convenient. Rosa's eyes filled with tears, but I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, no sadness. Just emptiness where they used to be. I don't need your help. I don't need your money. I don't need your approval. I haven't needed any of those things for 4 years. I saw Diego trying to slip past us toward the exit, head down, avoiding eye contact completely. The golden boy who couldn't even face the mess he'd helped create. "Diego!" I called out. He froze, but didn't turn around. "Enjoy whatever's left of Mom's money, but when it runs out, don't come looking for more." He kept walking. I turned back to Carlos and Rosa. "I hope it was worth it. Protecting his feelings cost you any relationship with me." "Mia, please," Rosa whispered, but I was already walking away. Mr. Thompson was waiting with Jessica and her family, along with Marcus from Dataflow and 2 of my developers from TrackFlow. These were the people who'd shown up when it mattered, who'd invested in me when I had nothing to offer but potential. "Ready to celebrate properly?" Jessica asked, linking her arm through mine. I looked back one more time. Carlos and Rosa were standing exactly where I'd left them, looking lost in the crowd of happy families. 4 years ago, their rejection had felt like the end of the world. Today, it felt like the beginning of everything. "Yeah," I said, turning toward my chosen family. "I'm ready." As we walked toward the parking lot, I realized something that would have shocked that broken 18-year-old girl. I didn't need them to acknowledge what they'd done wrong. I didn't need them to apologize. I didn't need them to understand how much they'd hurt me. I just needed them to see who I'd become without them, and now they had. Looking back, I used to think the worst thing that ever happened to me was losing my mom. But I was wrong. The worst thing was believing Rosa when she said I wasn't college material. The worst thing was accepting that maybe I really was just the helper type. The best thing, learning that their opinion of me had absolutely nothing to do with who I actually was. TrackFlow is now valued at over $2 million. We've expanded to 12 employees and serve businesses in 23 countries. Last month, I was invited to speak at South by Southwest about entrepreneurship and resilience. And you know what? I never sent Rosa and Carlos an invitation. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Some relationships aren't meant to be salvaged. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away from people who will never see your worth and build a life with people who do. I still think about my mom every day. I wish she could have seen me graduate, seen TrackFlow grow, seen me prove that her sacrifice meant something. But in a way, I think she did see it. Every late night I spent coding every scholarship application I submitted, every time I chose to keep going instead of giving up. She was there. Her belief in my future became my belief in myself. So if you're listening to this and you're walking through your own storm, if someone has told you that you're not enough, that you don't have what it takes, that you should just be practical and settle for less, I need you to hear this. Sometimes the people closest to us are the first to write us off. But if you're walking through that storm alone, know this: their disbelief isn't the truth, it's just noise. Your worth isn't determined by who invests in you. It's determined by how you invest in yourself when no one else will. Their rejection isn't the end of your story. It's just the beginning of a better one. If you've ever had to fight for what others were handed, if you've ever had to prove yourself to people who should have believed in you from the start, like and subscribe. Your voice matters here, your story matters here, and trust me, your success will be so much sweeter when you know you built it yourself. Thanks for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. I share stories like this every week. Real people overcoming real challenges and proving that your past doesn't define your future. Drop a comment and let me know. Have you ever had to prove wrong the people who should have believed in you? I read every single one. Until next time, keep building your own ladder.